a long time ago when I first started working alongside Chad and Pam, Chad said to me, one of the things you do well, Ira, is that you put the philosophies the teachers come with, the belief systems that they come with, into a historical context so that they can understand where their beliefs come from. And one of the things I always try to point out to teachers is that the American education system was designed, in the late 19th century to succeed with 20% of children. The whole goal of grade level standards and the first through 8 grades was designed to get 80% of the kids filtered out of the education system so that you could invest in the 20% that would go to high school, which was, high school attendance at the start of World War I. We have this system that's designed to do certain things that we no longer believe in. What I always say to teachers and administrators, it's remarkable that we have the success we have, considering that we're starting from a place where 20% was the goal. So, we do better than that. And we only do better than that by the sort of sweat of the teachers, to get more kids involved. So it's not the teacher's fault that they believe this. This is what they've been shown and taught all along. For administrators, though, you have to build the environment where they understand that traditionally success in the education profession is predicated on success as a student in the existing system. So, I used to, when I was at Michigan State, I used to make this very strong argument that what we needed was a much higher level of academic diversity in teacher education programs, in administrative learning programs, because if you don't have a mix of people who did well in school and people who did badly in school for a variety of reasons, you will never develop a change-driven cohort, because people need to understand the disconnect between success in life and success in school as we know it. So, we've tried to make this not about a blame game, except to blame the historical system, which, so it's important for people to know that everything we do, in terms of those traditional practices, was originally designed around a really bad intention, something we would now sort of recoil from if we listen to it. I wrote a dissertation on the history of American education, and what's fascinating about the 19th century writers who created the system we have now is that they were very, very blunt about the purpose. They wanted to make sure to leave people out. If you go back to between 1840 and 1875, the primary goal of public education was to destroy the native culture of Catholic immigrants coming to the country. There were, and that's our whole class environment was built around that concept. So if we can explain to people what the history of education in this country is about, we can win them over. We can get them to say, oh, okay, because teachers have been abused by this system as badly as students have.
How does the concept of, you might want to define it as well, but the concept of zero-based thinking play into all of this?
Zero-based thinking is, something I latched onto a long time ago, and it comes from originally zero-based budgeting back during the Reagan administration. The idea that you should start every year at zero, so you can decide, am I putting money where I want it to be, where it will accomplish what I want? Zero-based thinking in education is, to use Pam's term, all about the Bell Labs moment. And she tells the story better than I do, but there's that moment in the early 50s when the head of AT&T goes out to Bell Labs in New Jersey and says, okay, this is what we're going to do this year. we're going to imagine that the phone system of the United States has been completely destroyed. And you now have to come up with a plan to reconstruct the communications network. And over the next year, the engineers at Bell Labs developed at least the concepts of everything we use today: cell phones and wireless and microwave transmission, and just dialing by pushing buttons instead of spinning a rotary clicker. They just imagined into being this entirely new thing because, they said, well, why would we ever put wires up again, right? That seems like a really bad idea. And so our translation of that is, imagine if you've never seen a school, you'd never heard of a school, but you had to get kids from age 4 to say 18 or 22. What would you do? And if you can think with that blank slate, you sort of get to your North Star of thinking. This is where I want to go. We can't make that leap all in one shot. It's not possible. We have all this existing infrastructure and things like that in place. And the phone company couldn't make the leap in less than 40 years either, when it really came down to it. But if you have that North Star as your goal, then your tinkering will be done with a purpose to move you toward that. So, what we can say, for example, is, and I think this is now 4 years ago, but we were faced with needing to add 6 classrooms to an urban elementary school. And what we did instead of adding 6 classrooms is we built this very complex space for the equivalent of 6 classes of children, K through 5, with 6 teachers, all interacting, built around a kitchen in the middle, because that's sort of the hearth of the home kind of learning environment, with lots of ability to flow in or out. The space has multiple levels because hills are part of the world, and it has nooks to hide in and big spaces to gather in and all sorts of things like that. We did away with the concept of age-based grades. That is, we said, kids might cluster around and sort of home teachers as a thing, but basically it would be this interconnected flow of things based on the idea of, the aspirational peer, which means the kid who can do just the next step that you can't, so you can, imitate and follow and learn from. So we created this as a total change center, but at the same time, we went around the rest of that school and we changed not every bit of furniture, but certain chunks of furniture, certain places. We developed a long-term plan that if this was a great success, we would be able to knock down walls in a variety of other places to create more environments like this. Reimagining this and led us to, this radically different space. Now, we didn't make this radically different space for all 7,000 of our elementary school kids, but we made it with a plan. So since that time, we've converted an entire rural elementary school into this pattern. We just rebuilt another urban elementary school. And in this case, we had learned enough to know that we had to redo the entire building as we added on. We had to add on 16 classrooms, but we rebuilt the other 24, at the same time. And so it led us into a place. And, but I will say that part of this comes from how widely do you spread your learning. One of the things that I did with Dr. Moran 5 or 6 years ago is we toured a whole bunch of schools in Ireland, and we saw that, they don't think of dividing elementary school kids up by age. And so we saw this, marvelous level of interconnected learning. And one of the things that struck us was, Pam said to a teacher, wouldn't it be easier if you just had a room full of 8-year-olds? And she just looked at us and said, I don't understand. If you had a room full of 8-year-olds, how would anyone learn to be 9? Um, and but you think about the way people learn outside of school, how they learn in families, how they, you see how they learn from play with other kids, and suddenly it all opens up to you that you can do something radically different. So the zero-based thinking is not to say we're going to throw everything out tomorrow, because one of the things that we often focus on is that concept of aim small, miss small at the start. Don't do a LAUSD iPad moment where you put something out to everyone and it doesn't work. But start with your goal, which gives you the plan that allows your pilots to be a real opportunity to learn from.